With the announcement of Kill Team Gallowfall, the Chaos Beastmen just got a whole new line of miniatures, but most people don't know much about them. So I want to go over with you what exactly the Beastmen are, as well as their history on the tabletop. The Beastmen have two different backstories of where they come from. The old one is that they were mutants. Basically, when the parents were corrupted by chaos, their offspring would gain these animalistic features like claws and horns. But since then, they have been reclassified as abhumans, meaning they are a side branch of humanity. While they are still on the fringe of society, it's a step above being a mutant as far as the Imperium is concerned. Because they're outcasts, and they're just one step away from being relabeled and hunted down, many of them have turned to Chaos for protection, and a place they'll actually be accepted. Because Chaos will embrace them, while the Imperium, if they relabeled them as mutants, will just hunt them down and kill all of them. So Beastmen can take a lot of different forms. There's ones that look like goats, and there's stuff like Minotaurs, who are actually comparable to Ogren in strength, and they make awesome servants for Chaos as frontline troops. Because even the non-Minotaur Beastmen are larger and stronger than a normal human, they'll typically have some variety of melee weapon to fight with, and they use their physiology to their advantage. They can use firearms and other tools. We've seen the new Kill Team models, they have pistols and a couple other gadgets, but they're not a very organized fighting force, they really do rely on brute strength. So once they become servants of Chaos, they can actually pledge loyalty to one of the 4 Chaos gods, and we have visuals for each one. Some of these are pretty old black and white pictures, but I'll try to find the best ones I can. The most common one we see on the tabletop are the Zangors, which serve Zeech. So typically the Zangors were actually servants of the Thousand Sons, who were humans that were turned into Zangors. So they have a different backstory than the normal Beastmen, but I still wanted to include them here. We also have the Bloodgors, which are the followers of Khorne, obviously. They normally have like a dog-like appearance, and they have red fur. They have your typical traits of Khorne, where they absolutely love bloodshed, and try to kill everything they can find. There's not much about Nurgle's Beastmen. We've only ever seen one model of it, and like all followers of Nurgle, they're absolutely covered in blisters and they're just oozing with disease. And finally, we have the Beastmen of Slaanesh. So we actually have a miniature line for these. They typically have horns like a bull to look like the greater demons of Slaanesh, and they also have their limbs changed to those weird crab-like hands. I'm not really sure what you call those, to be honest. So for Beastmen on the tabletop, they've been one of those models that have reappeared and disappeared throughout the history of Warhammer. So they were originally in Warhammer Fantasy, which makes a lot of sense, and then they were a direct carryover into 40k. In early editions of Warhammer, they were part of the Imperial Guard in the Homo sapien Varietas doctrine, or you could play them as part of the Lost and the Damned, which that was basically just an army of things that turned to Chaos. But later on, around the same time that the squats were removed, they removed the Beastmen. At that time, Games Workshop was trying to separate 40k and the fantasy section to have distinct sci-fi and fantasy models. The next time we saw Beastmen were during 7th edition when the Zangors were introduced, which was again a unit you could run in the sci-fi or fantasy side of Warhammer, and those models are still around. Then we've done a few variety of them in a few other games, but in small numbers. Your Half-Horn was a character you could play in Necromunda, and in Blackstone Fortress, we had Beastmen models added as well. Then in 2021, the Slaanesh Beastmen were added to Warhammer Underworlds, but I believe you could run them in Age of Sigmar. And finally, we're getting an entire kill team of them in Gallowfall. And most kill teams are getting 40k rules, so I don't know how that will interact with 10th edition, but with that added, you can play some variety of Beastmen in almost every Games Workshop game.